What's up, everybody? It's Jay Liberty here, and I'm doing my inaugural video on YouTube. Been kind of looking forward to this for a while. It's one of those things where you think you're gonna do something, and then you put it off, and you talk to people about it, and you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna do this," and they're like, "No, you're not." Then you try and prove them wrong, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it," and you don't. Well, now I'm doing it at 5 in the morning. But really, the whole point of this is I just want to have conversations, and I feel like one of the easiest ways to kind of have that release of just wanting to talk about stuff is just to put thoughts out there for everybody to hear. I don't really care much about the monetization factor. I really just want to have conversations and eventually do some live streams. I'm gonna be here on YouTube. I'm gonna be on D Live eventually. Um, I also have synced everything with Odyssey, so try to get all those ducks in a row right at first. But really, I just wanted to start this series that I want to do on socialism because one of the biggest things that's being pushed right now, especially in America, is a form of socialism that I think is pretty much the same as any communist regime that's ever been around. All kind of leads to the same thing. Uh, but I eventually want to, tie it into a conversation, really about really where the country's headed because I think it's going to go into one of two ways. It's either going to be taken over by a socialist regime, however that looks. Now, I doubt it's going to happen under Biden because that that dude's a little uh, he's a little out there. I think he's really just a pawn. He's just a way to get Trump out of office. But now that Trump is not in office, I think we're really going to see where the politics here in this country goes, whether it's going to go more libertarian or whether it's going to go more socialist. Problem is that because of how powerful our government is and how powerful big tech and everything is, I think it's just more likely that we're gonna unfortunately end up in a more socialist type of system. But I wanted to go through that system today and let me know what you think. Um, because there's a lot of conversations about this stuff happening all over the web, like people debating back and forth, but people get really heated about it because I feel like people like hold on to like certain values in themselves and they try to attribute it to their favorite system without actually looking into what happens in that system and how people achieve their goals because there's pitfalls in each system, but eventually I want to prove that the system we had set up in our founding, our constitutional republic, probably the best system that one could hope for in insofar as you have a limited government and you maximize the most amount of freedom for the most amount of people without having to tear other people down. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Socialism is a system that really just it focuses on the means of production in the economy as well as trying to achieve a equitable outcome when it comes to like distributing wealth and ownership and things of that nature. Um, it views labor and capital as commodities of someone's sweat rather than the value of their work and the value of that product or of that good or service. Because here's the thing is socialism on paper looks pretty good until you try to replace it with a system that already exists. We have a system where products, goods, services, they're all valued against each other. If someone comes up with a better idea, someone's going to probably take over that market, or at least a good portion of it. I mean, look at Elon Musk. The dude just blew up the vehicle industry, and he did it through electric cars. Now, you can't really argue the merit of that type of work. Now there are people that will criticize him in general and say that he quote unquote doesn't work hard or whatever. And I think that's kind of where people get disconnected, is that they've never had to manage something of that scale. Because don't get me wrong. I mean, if you look into Tesla, I mean, those cars have all kinds of problems. They don't even have. For a while, they didn't even have a way to properly replace people's batteries that were going out. Like it, it's pretty much in its infancy. But I mean, to say that Elon Musk himself doesn't work hard, I mean, the dude probably spends like 90 hours a week working and managing the success and decisions and direction of that company. Capitalism works from a top-down structure. Ownership and management of the company is a top-down approach that it works. It's just the problem is that when people want to take part in that ownership and take part in that management, they feel like they're owed that piece of that pie just because they work for the company. I mean, if I start a company and I'm going to put all my blood, sweat, and tears into it, I'm going to start, building whatever it is out of my garage and spend years and years and years of risking my own capital and whatever other job I have. Because a lot of times people have like other jobs when they're trying to start a new venture, right? Um, it's not an easy thing. Um, but when you have a good idea and you have a good business model and you implement it, eventually you're going to want to expand. Eventually you're going to want to hire new people. Eventually you're going to want to bring people on to take part in that. But the initial work, right? The initial I guess you call it labor, right? The initial um, uh, push was done by one or very few people who, rightfully so, will not want to give up that ownership. Um, you know, you got the whole idea of like these worker co-ops in this in the democratic socialist sense, where you basically implement democracy in the workplace and split up ownership of the company equally among its workers. Well, I don't see how that's going to work if the people that just work there, especially unskilled and unmanagerial people, they're not going to have the level of work that it took to get the company where it was. Yeah, they can continue it, but let's be honest with you, or let's be honest with each other. The the soul of that company is in the people that started it. The soul of that product rests with the founders and the people who invented that thing. You can take away all the workers, and you're still going to have that thing. You're still going to have that product. You take away the workers of Tesla, and you still have the vision of Tesla and the direction of that company and of SpaceX with Elon Musk. Yes, absolutely. The people that work for him make that thing run, but the risk is tied in the people who own the capital. So it's not something that's necessarily tenable to try to force people who are in one system to try and take them to another system, because ultimately it ends up in force. But so what I kind of want to do is just like so you have socialism, right? If I can spell correctly. So you have socialism, then you have capitalism. And this is just very basic stuff. So with socialism, you have um, um, democratically owned and managed of production. I'm gonna actually scale this back a little bit. Oh, there we go. And then with capitalism, you have a top down. Trying to think of the word. So it's innovative. So a top down innovative approach to production and the production and distribution of your good or service. So top down innovative approach, management, and owners control the I guess you call it the decision making, control the decisions and direction. So, and this is why I wanted to write it down, because it becomes more clear when you really look at it. Especially if we do this, direction and decision making is democratic among there's ultimately a problem with that, isn't there? It's just like what I was saying earlier. You are trying to basically subvert the decision making and direction of a company by putting it into the hands of people who may not necessarily have the tools and means and drive and innovative mind to drive the company in the direction that it should go. Because when something is democratic, doesn't necessarily mean it's good. And this isn't stuff I'm like ripping off the top of my head. I mean, these are the things that democratic socialists want. They want democratically controlled corporations. I mean, if anything is apparent, it's that people left to a vote are never going to agree on anything. Because I mean, you think about it, the person who invented that product, the person who invented that process, especially if you convert the system that we have now and you have a bunch of like eager beavers wanting to go in and be all democratic with the means of production, they're gonna basically vote these people out. I mean, call it hyperbolic if you want to, but that's just what's gonna happen. It's inevitable. And some people are going to want to take the company in a certain way, like take for example, I don't want to use Elon Musk again. Let's take Steve Jobs for an example. How much of that of those profits do you think Steve Jobs used for himself? And how much of it do you think was reinvested back into Apple for research and technology, marketing? I mean, look. I mean, you think about how much that commercial cost Apple in 1984. That was a big deal. But that's the kind of stuff that these guys have in mind. Is that, like, rarely is it the cash incentive to beat out I mean, these guys are ultra competitive people. They want to be the best. Yeah, it's lucrative, but it's not one of those things where they're just like hoarding all these like all these stacks of cash and keeping it from everybody else. These profits are reinvested into the company in a strategic and an intentional, deliberate way. What do you think a democratically owned and run company is going to do with those profits? It's never going to go anywhere. There's zero incentive to innovate when everything is owned equally, because the bigger the company gets, the more people are going to be needed to run the company. This is like economics 101. Just because it takes 5 people to run the company now at X amount of profit. So like this isn't exact science, right? I mean, it is an exact science, but I'm not gonna, I'm gonna kind of give you just kind of a low level example. So let's say you have 5 workers in the co-op sense, and they own a company that makes, I don't know, let's say lemonade. You have 2 people who squeeze them lemons. Squeeze those lemons. 2 squeeze lemons. Then you got 3, or you got 2 that mix the drink. Your mixologist, and you got 1 guy at the stand. And this is actually a pretty good example, because this is 3 different skill sets when it comes to that, right? So because let's say you add like salesmanship, on top of that. I mean, you're talking about 3 different groups of people in this company that contribute in much different ways to the success of the company. Now, arguing which one is most important, I don't know. If you're talking about something as simple as making lemonade, I would guess that this guy is probably the most important. The salesmanship, the selling of that product, the getting it out there. But anyway, I was just kind of surprised at how good the example was. Tooting my own horn. So you have the 5 workers that make lemonade, and let's say their profit is $100, right? Dollar sign at the end. So you have the profit of $100. And trust me, I'm getting somewhere with this. Because keep in mind, these guys in a democratically run company, that means each one is getting $20. Okay? If you know economics and you took any kind of business, you would know that that is not going to stay that is not going to stay constant the more people you add. And that's where I'm getting with this. So, because if you have a 6-worker lemonade stand and you have a lot of people needing to, let's say you have more people coming, and you're having to produce more to meet demand, right? So now you need 3 people squeezing lemons. 3 squeeze, 2 mix, 1 sale. Or sell. Well, in order for this to work, you have to either increase or keep the same the per person profit margin in order for people to make the amount of money that you're wanting. But let's say that you reach more people, but instead you only make $110. Well, now my math is bad, but you would have now $110 split between 6 people. That's $18.33. You've now lost money per person. You've made more money as a company. The profit's bigger, but you're not really reinvesting anything. You're just adding raw labor to try to get more out of the labor. labor doesn't necessarily mean higher productivity. Now, again, this is a very, like, it's probably not the best example, but it is at least an elementary example of how sticky things can get when profits are not allocated properly. Because let's be honest with you, in a capitalist system, anybody would be able to tell you that of the 6 workers, there's one of those people that's probably more valuable. Doesn't mean they put the most work into it. You know, the person who's going out and selling it and going out and marketing that lemonade, in this case, is the person who is the least expendable. So naturally, in a capitalist system, you would adjust the wages to allow for the seller to make enough money to keep him around, and then just fill in the rest of them. Does it? I mean, is it necessarily fair? I mean, yeah. I mean, capitalism is a fair system. Whatever you're worth, whatever your labor and your skills are worth, that is what you are paid. But in this method, the most important guy is now gonna be hosed because the rest of these guys wanna increase, and add as many people as they want to, but he's the odd man out. Because out of 6 people, I mean, what's one guy's vote compared to 6 people? Because now he's having to go out and work harder selling to keep up that number of demand, and he's not getting anything for it. He's getting the difference of the 20 and 1833. So this is where eventually, and it's I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. It's literally, they have had issues with this in the past with socialism. Venezuela and Cuba, especially doctors, lawyers, people who made money because of the time and effort they spent in their field, they eventually just quit. And they either fled or they just took different jobs, to the point where their government and their regime actually went after them and forced them to be doctors and forced them to be, whatever that was, engineers. It didn't work because you inevitably took that quote unquote wage slavery that socialism tries to get rid of, and it created more wage slavery, where basically the inmates were running the asylum. You had a bunch of unskilled workers who were running the entire system, and all the people who were skilled, who did put all that effort into it, and basically killed themselves over their stress and their labor and their work, where usually they were getting compensated based on that level of skill, effort, time put and sacrifice that they put into that. Whereas somebody who's just doing manual labor is just doing manual labor. Yes, it's not easy. Yes, it's not hard, but the next person up can do the job just as well. Where are you going to find another doctor? Where are you going to find another engineer? So you have these people like AOC who try to blow smoke up the whole country's ass, saying that they want to, that we do not want to create an all-powerful government bureaucracy. Bullshit. Bullshit. Even though socialism, even at its very roots, I mean, they even say that they don't agree with having a giant bureaucratic state, but the bureaucratic state is the one that implements and enforces and keeps everything level and keeps people in line when they fall out. Resources are used to make money for capitalists rather than meet human needs. Like this, I mean, this is gonna have to turn into a video series because this selfie is getting long, but you get what I mean. This is it. They use terms and phrases that make people feel good about themselves and make people feel good about the system, well, without telling you that one, it's inefficient, and two, you basically have stifled all innovation, stifled all amounts of hard work. Like nobody's going to want to become a doctor and make the same amount of money as somebody who is doing nothing, right? Or even at the basic labor sense, somebody who's just scanning packages and putting them in a truck is making the same amount or close to that of a doctor. So for anything like this to exist, you'd have to have some disparity on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and level that with the inevitability that some people are just going to make more money than others because they put more effort, they put more time, they have greater skill than the others. And if you don't recognize that, it is going to fail. I mean, I can recognize that this sounds good, but only if you view everyone as like equally important in the work that they do. Because there's so many outs to this. I mean, take the worker co-op thing. Like people will just hire contractors. I mean, hell, that dude Vosh, who does all the freaking like live streams and stuff, like people called him out for it too. There's people that worked for him and they were calling him out like, hey Vosh, you had people that worked for you and you didn't give them ownership and they said, did you give ownership into, your company or whatever to your, YouTube channel? He's like, well, no, I didn't. That's because I hired them as contractors. Well, no shit, man. If the person who is advocating for worker co-ops the most is going to try to get around it, don't you think the people who hate that system is going to try and get around it also? You won't even have people who are full-time employed anymore. You're just going to get a bunch of contractors who are just renewing their contracts every year with no ownership, and they're just like, yeah, you're just expendable. Which is worse than we have right now. So, I don't know. This is just an introduction. This is just the tip of the iceberg. If you guys like, what I have to say, if you like this type of stuff, like, share, subscribe. Again, I'll be on Odyssey. I'll be on YouTube. I'll try and keep these under 30 minutes apiece, because there is a lot to talk about. But let me know what you think. All right, love you guys. Till next time.